Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and today we're looking at a lot of things we have looked at previously. MAGA politicians being dangerous. The degradation of law under these folks' leadership. And, of course, Fox News panicking as the reality about what they are and what they do becomes available to the general public. They had relied upon, of course, us being dupes, us going on believing that they were just a news organization that had some conservatives in it. No, straight up liars. Got a lot of great coverage from all over the internet, and of course, your old pal Jake is going to tell you what you can do about it. Never flawlessly, but always honestly. All right, let's just get cracking, because you know I love Midas Touch, even though I enjoy disagreeing with them as much as I enjoy agreeing with them. But the way they summarize what's going on is so good that I love playing them for you, and I always recommend you have a look at them. Here's Midas Touch with good old Knock 'em Out Pete, a.k.a. Ben Meiselas, talking about Republican leaders, or I should say the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, the leadership going around and straight up threatening America over the weekend. Here they are.
I'm Ben Meiselas from the Midas Touch Network. Look, when the MAGA Republicans tell you who they are, listen to them. The MAGA Republicans went on all of the weekend shows and, again, revealed their cruelty, their fascism, their gaslighting, their disinformation here. This is the weakest Speaker of the House in American history, MAGA Republican Kevin McCarthy, telling Maria Bartiromo on the Fox Morning Show that the one thing he learned about the January 6th committee is that the January 6th committee was not honest. Play the clip.
Actually, real quick, there's also a question of honesty. You gave the tapes of January 6th to Tucker Carlson. Do you have any regrets about that? What have we learned from these tapes that have been on Tucker Carlson tonight?
Well, I didn't give the tapes. I allowed them to come see them, just like an exclusive with anybody else. My goal here is transparency, and we will slowly roll out to every individual news agency. They can come see the tapes as well. The first thing I found is that the January 6th committee was not honest with us, that it's not 14,000 hours of tapes. There's 41,000 hours of tapes. Let everyone see.
Just got to refute that on the off chance that anybody suspects this person might be speaking honestly at any point ever. They didn't say there were 14,000 hours of total tapes. The January 6th committee gave the American public the credit, which they should have, for understanding that there was a whole lot of tape that was filming nothing. Because if you've got a camera here and you've got a camera here, and a crowd breaks in from here to here, you will be recording both things the entire time. Hence, while the crowd is breaking in here, there's no point in showing tape of an empty hallway here. Ridiculous.
Them to bring their own judgment. The one thing I understand in America, we should have equal justice. What really raises the point with me is, why did I watch federal courts? Why did I watch cities burn, federal agencies or something, and nobody arrested there? I think we should have equal justice across this country, and we should have transparency. And it's really concerning to me, since we've taken the majority, the things I have learned that government has done, that it withheld information from the American people. That will not happen on our watch. Regardless of what the information says or doesn't say, I think transparency is best, and allow the American public to see it all. And we need to have equal justice across this nation.
Yeah, I mean, at one point, we're watching them walk and being escorted by police within the Capitol, which was quite stunning. Speaker McCarthy, thanks very much for your leadership and for joining me today.
I mean, when you want to talk about not being honest, I mean, Kevin McCarthy is on tape right around January 6th repeatedly saying that what Donald Trump has done to our country is horrific, that he was going to tell Donald Trump that he needed to resign. We have Kevin McCarthy making a myriad of other statements.
When I heard this clip, the reason foremost that I wanted to share it was that right there. He brings it back to the absolutely fair point that in the days following January 6th, a whole lot of the people who are the strongest MAGA supporters right now, a whole lot of those folks, were talking about holding Trump legally accountable. Lindsey Graham, I will never forget saying, "That's it. Enough is enough. I'm out." He always seems to have more of his accent when he's speaking honestly. It's bizarre. It's like he forgets he's putting on a show for folks. The point is, all these folks believed there would be consequences for people that betrayed the country. They understood that what had just happened was unique and awful. But then what happened? Well, there were no consequences. The Department of Justice made it very clear that their primary interest was going after little fish. It wasn't until the January 6th committee, as in not the Department of Justice, but our representatives, yours and mine, the people we sent to Washington, took it seriously, that it got taken seriously, as far as we can tell. It was not until state-level prosecutors got on the ball that we saw any serious investigation into the people that arranged for January 6th to happen. And as a result, the politics around it shifted again. As a result, we had Kevin McCarthy making a trip down to Mar-a-Lago to make nice with Donald Trump. All the folks who were in bright red districts decided, I can get away with not being honest again, so I'm going to go right back to that. Our Department of Justice had an opportunity to put America back on track, and they failed. Now we are on the lookout to see if there is, in fact, any justice at all to be had. And it's sad that we are in such a place. But just remember, there was a moment in the country where this cult could have been taken care of, done away with like that. But we didn't take it. The Department of Justice just let it go.
In real time, but now he wants to lean into the ultra MAGA base, and this is who he is. Speaking of which, here is Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, MAGA Republican, saying that should we really be allowing people in their 20s to retire at the age of 62? Should we allow it? Play this clip.
I mean, the life expectancy of the average American right now is about 77 years old. For people who are in their 20s, their life expectancy will probably be 85 to 90. Does it really make sense to allow someone who's in their 20s today to retire at 62? Those are the kind of things that we should talk about.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it on that sourpuss right there because he deserves it. Just want to also draw some attention here. This technique is no different than the technique used in anti-trans legislation. It's no different than the technique used with draconian criminal justice laws, which aren't designed to make us safer. They're just designed to put more black people in prison. Making marijuana a Schedule I drug, for example. That was designed on its face to get Nixon's political enemies locked up. Why? Because the hippies love pot and black people love pot. This is no different. I know it sounds like a totally different policy they're talking about. Oh, Social Security. Let's make sure the young people don't get it at 62 or whatever the hell. Let's make sure that young people don't get a chance to retire when we want to retire. In other words, they're saying, don't fight us on this because we're not going after you, our voters. We know the young people don't vote for us, so we're just attacking young people. But they do this and they degrade those policies which people rely on. They make the country worse for other Americans. It's designed to section off parts of America and attack them. We cannot allow that to happen. If you are in the age group which they're saying is going to not have their Social Security touched, just understand, they will attack yours if they see the political opportunity. And one of the walls between them attacking your Social Security and not is young people getting the same deal you're getting. So if they can attack the young people's deal, well, maybe they'll go just a little bit older next time. Maybe let's say people who are 40 now in 5 years. Maybe they'll say people who are 50 now in 6 years. Maybe they'll say we need to just do away with Social Security and trust our companies, who we all know care about us. We need to trust our companies to provide our retirement. And then you're going to find across the board that you are fired 1 or 2 years before you would have been eligible for that private Social Security. And then they're going to say, oh, companies we can just trust to provide for us. We don't need to require that they provide retirement for their people. They're going to pay people so well as they're employed for them that people will be able to set aside money for their own retirement. It's the chain they're going to follow. Notice in all of this, this punk up here doesn't mention what the simple solution would be. Would fix funding Social Security overnight. Raise the cap. We don't tax a dollar over $160,000, I think it is. Raise the cap. How about this? We tax all income for Social Security, 100% of it. How would that make a difference in your life? In your life, it wouldn't. It wouldn't make any difference. Already, all of your income is taxed for Social Security. Unless you are a millionaire, that's the case. Raise the cap. Make rich people pay what they owe. Make them pay for the society they got to become rich in. That simple. This guy is not seriously talking about that because his interest is not in making Social Security better or more solvent or whatever for the American people. His interest is in getting rid of it. That's it.
Changes in Medicare we should talk about.
And this is the new talking point that MAGA...
Christ, he goes after Medicare as well. Exact same thing. He's trying to weaken it. We should be doing the opposite. As stated in our earlier stream, how do we transition from the society we're in now to the society we're going to be? We just expand those rights we already have. Expand Social Security, expand Medicare, so on and so forth.
Republicans have been...
I'm going to let Knock 'em Out Pete go for it.
Rolling out, raise the retirement age because they were exposed for wanting to cut Social Security. So now they're basically saying, well, let's just raise the retirement age. Let's see what we allow. Allow you to retire? Honestly, who the heck do Republicans think they are? That they own this country? That they could tell us when they will allow us to retire? Here is Congresswoman Nancy Mace. And here she says the same thing because the big platform for MAGA Republicans raised the retirement age. Play this.
Nancy effing Mace. Ooh.
Split.
I want to ask you about something your fellow South Carolinian Nikki Haley said. Obviously, she is running for president.
She says something here which depresses me, but I got to give her credit. You're going to see.
2024. She said this week that she supports raising the retirement age for people who are in their 20s when it comes to receiving Social Security benefits. Do you agree with her on that?
I think that's something that has to be on the table. We have to look at. I'm 45 years old. I'm assuming that Social Security will be in.
She's 11 years older than me. I look like I could be her grandfather, for Christ's sake. Money is a necessity in the USA. Good Lord. Woof, I'll take the L on that one.
That I won't have retirement funds from what I've put into in my adult life, my working life. We do have to look at Social Security. We've got to look at our spending in this country, mandatory and discretionary. If we're going to take on fixing the Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, you name it, we've got to get serious about it.
Okay, so
she says we got to get serious about it. She only recommends attacking it, though. She does not put forward the easiest solution. Let me just keep repeating this solution because it is easy. We could institute it immediately, and it would fix the problem completely. Raise the cap. Raise the cap on taxing it. We have a needless cap. We're saying right now, the people who make the least amount of money in our country must fund it entirely. That's ridiculous. We should start all taxing. All taxing should begin with the rich and work its way down to everybody else. That is how it should work. You should not be paying taxes for anything that a rich person doesn't pay more taxes for. That should be how it works.
you do.
Now, we're still sticking with this. Your old pal Jake's fired up. Back in the 50s, 90% of the wealth generated at the top bracket. So as in when you go from, let's say, making, I'm going to use arbitrary numbers here. You go from making $900,000 a year to $1 million a year. Once you're at $1 million, every dollar made after that point was taxed 90%. 90% of it gone. That's going back to the government. Why? Because we knew, in the 50s we knew this, you've already made more money than everybody else. You made more money than you need. Yeah, you still get 10 cents of every dollar. Okay, you get a little something. But 90% of your income, gonzo, after that point. Again, all your income up to that point taxed like everybody else. We need to return to those days. It's a real quick fix for a lot of our problems. F you, Nancy Mace, by the way.
Support potentially raising the age to maybe extend the...
As long as it's not anybody that's heading into retirement right now. We do not want to take
my
away
voters.
those that are in retirement or those that are heading into retirement. But if we're talking about younger generations, my kids, for example, if they know what the retirement will look like 40 years from now, 50 years from now, then that should be on the table and can be. We have to. Both Republicans and Democrats have screwed
Nope, just Republicans.
this thing up, and
I take it back. There's been corporate Dems that have as well. All right, withdrawing Nancy Mace. By the way, F her. She knows very well her kids are going to be rich because she's rich. She's going to hand them down well more than they need.
they've got to fix it.
Okay, you said it.
Also on the
Wow.
Sunday morning shows, one of the talking points by MAGA Republicans that they're going in is they're saying that the reason that Silicon Valley Bank failed is because it was woke.
I want you to be able to appreciate what this guy is complaining about before he says it. There was a reporting requirement that this guy wanted, not this guy, the person that's going to be on screen in a moment, wanted to get rid of, which simply allowed, didn't insist upon, but allowed reporting for the environmental impact of I think a bank's activity, whatever, of a business's activity. He wants to get rid of that, so they are not allowed, not permitted, to inform their investors of the environmental impact. That's the world this guy wants.
It was too woke of a bank. It was wokeified. I mean, that's really what they're going with. We'll talk about the real reason in a second, but that's where they're going. It's too woke. This is the chairman of the Oversight Committee in Congress. I said the chairman of the Oversight Committee, James Comer. Listen to what he had to say. Play this clip.
And then we see now coming out that they were one of the most woke banks in their quest for the ESG type policy and investing. This could be a trend, and there are consequences for bad Democrat policy. And I think we need to keep an eye on all the banking sector right now.
Well,
okay, it's not that the bank is too woke and that it has diversity and inclusion initiatives. By the way, Fox has diversity and inclusion initiatives. It failed because Donald Trump rolled back the Dodd-Frank regulations that would have allowed for a stress test to identify the issue. When Donald Trump bragged about rolling back all the regulations on community and regional banks and how that was going to be great for the economy, when it absolutely wasn't. These regulations were put in place following the previous financial disaster to stop things like this. And the first thing,
just to sum up what he's saying real quick before we move on. Dodd-Frank came about as a result of the 2008 financial crash. There is a movie I highly recommend you watch. It is called The Big Short. It is a lot of fun. Is it I don't know, the best overall for story? Probably not. They went very avant-garde with a lot of it, and it comes off like in some places like a PowerPoint presentation. But it's still fascinating to watch because it happened. The ridiculousness of it all. It happened. The insanity that went on with our richest Americans 100% occurred, and we are watching now the rollbacks of within this short amount of time. Ryan Gosling is just as hot now as he was when that movie was filmed, and already we're seeing the rollback of regulations such as Dodd-Frank, which were designed to prevent that catastrophe from happening again. And guess what? Well, houses are getting super expensive again, aren't they? A lot of folks say they can't afford them, can't they? Don't they? Guess what's going to happen again? By the way, at the end of that movie, they make a point of saying that Michael Burry, person who called this before everybody else, he's now investing in privately owned water. Oh no, that's not what we want. There we go. All right, this one, folks, is a pretty easy layup. Even though I've played things in a bizarre order. Yeah, vote in primaries. There's all kinds of there's all kinds of individual issues there. I just want you to get a sense of what MAGA folks are going to do when allowed to. They're going to try to screw us over on the margins. Everything we don't pay close attention to, they're going to try to wiggle in and get after. If you're sick of watching every single move that these people do, if you find it exhausting, me too, man. Me too. But there's a pretty simple fix for it. Get them the hell out of office. Vote in primaries, as we have seen time and time again. Go as left as you can. It's a good idea, especially in bright red areas. Because a lot of these red areas are now so populist that they've accidentally created an environment where a lefty on the far left, speaking honestly to them about populist issues, has a better chance of getting elected than a centrist. Because the centrists will try to appeal to them on all of the things that they hate about the GOP. They'll try to appeal to them by looking like, oh, I'm a regular GOP candidate, I'm just with the Democrats. Wink, wink. That's not going to appeal. What will appeal is populist policies. That's the left. And incidentally, if you want good policies, that's the left as well. Vote in primaries, go as left as you can. Throw all these other bums out of office. I don't care if they've got an R or a D by their name. If they are not strong supporters of Social Security, Medicare, and most importantly, taxing the rich, they got to go. Lawrence St. Laurent says, hey, Catherine Wolf, hey, too. Good to see y'all. If McCarthy, Lawrence St. Laurent says, if McCarthy wanted transparency, he'd put the totality of the video recording online. Agreed. And don't forget the second impeachment, GOP senators had the opportunity to get rid of Trump. Yep, they had the opportunity. There was no political will for it because we are a weak democracy. We got to strengthen that up. We got to get serious about these folks. We simply are not at the moment. Well, let's have a gander here. Brian Tyler Cohen. Oh, yes. So, my man, Brian Tyler Cohen, speaking of those text messages, recently had a great deal of fun at the expense of Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump after those two made it clear that A, they were not on the same page, and B, they still need each other. It's an awkward situation, and it's hilarious to watch. Let's have a chuckle at it together.
Today we're going to talk about Tucker Carlson's secret text being exposed and what he's doing to pander to Trump as a result. And I interview Media Matters CEO Angelo Carusone about the company's complaint against Fox with the FEC and a campaign to prevent Fox from being able to charge sky-high carriage fees that fund their network. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie.
Yeah, I do want to say that, I apologize for the epilepsy. I do want to say that interview is great. We're going to watch some of it for sure.
And sent some pretty revealing text messages about Trump in the aftermath of the whole stolen election saga. He said, quote, "We are very, very close to being able to ignore Trump most nights. I truly can't wait. I hate him passionately. I can't handle much more of this." And so those texts were...
Everybody hold up. Yeah, folks, if you know anyone who still watches Tucker Carlson and is a big fan of Trump, make sure they see that. Make sure they are at least aware of what their main source of information thinks about the guy they worship so. It's important at least that they be aware of that much, because the doubt needs to start creeping in. That is a crack by which it can begin to creep in. Tucker Carlson, not a fan of Trump. And yet, so many of the people that watch him basically worship Donald Trump. That is a dichotomy which needs to be addressed.
I hate him passionately. I can't handle much more of this. And so those texts were revealed, which was damning for both Tucker and Trump unto itself. But it's what happened next that I think is pretty telling, because now, coinciding with the release of those texts, suddenly Tucker's been going all in on this effort to rewrite the history of January 6th in what is like the most transparent and unconvincing way possible. So Tucker's claim here is that January 6th wasn't an insurrection. Here's a quick clip.
But the tape that we reviewed from within the building on that day proves it was neither an insurrection nor deadly.
And so his position is that it wasn't an insurrection because what the January 6th committee...
I'm sorry, how can he say it proves it wasn't deadly when there were deaths as a direct result of it? That's insane.
Didn't show you was all of the instances where the insurrectionists weren't destroying the Capitol. And I feel like I'm living on a different planet. Showing video of when someone isn't trying to hang the vice president doesn't invalidate the video where someone is trying to hang the vice president. They don't cancel each other out. Like, if you killed your family, and sorry to be morbid, but bear with me on this one. If you killed your family and it was caught on video and then you went to trial and you were like, Your Honor, here's video of me with my family from a vacation where I'm not killing them, what do you think the judge would say? Okay, you're right, case dismissed? Like, you showing evidence of you not committing a crime doesn't negate the evidence of you committing the crime, which is obvious, right? This is embarrassingly unconvincing by Tucker, which begs the question, why would Tucker do this? What's the point of an exercise that is so laughably weak? And there are two things that I can think of. First, because the right traffics in overt disinformation and normalizing political violence.
Let's see if he
and
gets it.
Creating manufactured outrage. And so what does Tucker have to lose by trafficking in it some more? Like, it's insane, so everyone will talk about it, and in the attention economy, that's worth a lot.
Number one, I still recommend watching Brian Tyler Cohen because he's just fantastic. But number two, we disagree about why they're doing this. Let me toss in my 2 cents after he lists both his thoughts here.
Also, beyond that, there are people who think that he's telling the truth. Like, was January 6th a normal tourist visit? Not a chance. Are there people who want to believe that it was? Of course. Does Tucker's show give them a permission structure to be able to believe it? Absolutely. But the second thing is that he was caught talking shit on Trump. And he said himself, based on the Dominion filing, quote, what he's good at is destroying things. He's the undisputed world champion of that. He could easily destroy us if we play it wrong. And so this is Tucker's penance. This is Tucker cowering at the feet of a guy who he himself admitted has the power to destroy him. And so he's promoting the very narrative that Trump's hinged his entire identity on, which is that the election was stolen and that January 6th was warranted because it was a righteous effort to rectify a massive fraud on the American people. And of course, that's all bullshit. Tucker knows it's bullshit. Trump knows it's bullshit. But that's the story that Trump is selling. And so because Tucker got caught, now he is helping Trump sell his story. And I'll tell you what, I don't think that you'll ever see Trump lash out at Tucker because Trump knows that he's got power over Tucker now, and he also knows that Tucker's being a good little foot soldier for him, and so as long as he does his bidding, Trump's got no reason to destroy him, even though he can.
Respectfully disagree. So why does Fox News do what they do? Why does MAGA go with the stories they go with? The ridiculous, easily provable lies. Been saying it for a while. It's important to recognize it for what it is. It's not in the hopes that their audience believes them. It's so that it all just seems too confusing to pay attention to. That's it. They don't really expect their audience to memorize all the contradictory stories they're telling. They don't expect their audience to fully believe them. They just want to give their audience an excuse to not really believe the other people. There it is. They don't want them to think that Fox News is honest. They want their audience to believe that all media lies. That's why I really get annoyed when I hear people railing against the media without being specific. Because that's the goal of these folks. Yeah, I got a problem with corporate media, sure. I call it out individually when I see it. But when I say people go, media, you can't trust the media. I'm like, well, there's a win for Fox. That's the goal. You do have to be wary. You have to be critical, yes, of every source of information you have, including your old pal Jake. You got to be critical of it. And you got to be wary of any source of media that doesn't welcome critique. But there is a massive difference between a propaganda outlet and something like MSNBC, which simply, MSNBC is in the pocket of big corporations. That doesn't mean everything they say is wrong. It just means you have to be aware of the fact that their bills are paid for by massive advertisers. You see somebody like me talking about Harry's Razors. You don't really have to worry that the Harry's Razors lobby is in here chopping up American bills, taking out provisions that they don't like. You're good. However, if you're watching MSNBC and on comes an advertisement for Paxa whatever, some medication that they tell you should ask your doctor about, as if you're going to know more than your doctor, as if your doctor hasn't researched all the medication you might need and recommends already according to whatever is best for your health, theoretically. You got to know that that's different. That's a whole nother level. But all of that is not the same as what Fox does. What Fox does is a beast all its own. They are a propaganda network, and they survive off of that. And they do get contributions directly from oligarchs who write laws for America. So what are they doing up there? What do I think Brian Tyler Cohen has missed about this? The actual goal, the wider goal. He's talking about in this specific instance, I appreciate what he's doing. I don't think he's entirely wrong, but I think he's missing the bigger danger here. The bigger danger is that the people who are watching Fox will come away from all that reporting thinking, this is too confusing to follow. The point is, all media lies, and we're right because we're conservative. That's what they're going to believe.
Trump's got leverage now, and he is perfectly content to use it. And just taking a step back here, it's amazing how all of these power dynamics revolve around these politicians and media personalities, all the while the losers in all of this are their viewers and supporters. All of these people, from Tucker to Trump and everybody in between, are all just making devil's bargains left and right to protect themselves. But the people who get fucked in all of this are the suckers who trust them, who believe that they're being told the truth, when in reality,
I've never heard him curse.
The power brokers here, the gatekeepers.
And all right, well, as long as we're here, as long as we're getting demonetized, let's do it properly. That was the best. First of all, that is how I feel. So kudos. He looks how I feel. 2, that was the best use of the word fucked I've heard in a long time because it's accurate.
Are just a bunch of millionaires and billionaires looking out for themselves and their own interests. With the irony being that their marks, their victims, will never know any better because the only people that they trust enough are the ones that are doing the lying in the first place.
Boom.
That's the tragic part in all of this. So just like Tucker promoted the January 6th truther stuff to protect his ratings and his profits, he's now doubling down to protect himself from Donald Trump. At no point does what Tucker do serve anyone but Tucker. And yet, that's how the right-wing media ecosystem works, with the biggest losers in all of this being the people conned into trusting that network in the first place. And so with that said, here's a preview of my interview with Media Matters president Angelo Carusone. Now, Media Matters has filed a complaint against Fox with the FEC. So first, can you explain what happened here and also what you hope to accomplish with the FEC?
Sure. I mean, basically what happened is, according to the filings and Rupert Murdoch's own acknowledgments, during deposition, his own sort of validation, he said he did this thing. Basically, in the 2020 election, right before Election Day, so late October 2020, the Biden campaign bought a series of advertisements, of which some of them were on Fox, which meant that Fox had confidential advertising information. So the nature of the ads, maybe where they were being purchased, when they were being deployed. So it's about essentially ad strategy. And what Rupert Murdoch said he did is that he says that he took the advertisements and he shared it with Jared Kushner, who was not only Trump's son-in-law, but he was also a senior advisor to the Trump campaign. And we filed an FEC complaint because that's illegal. And it's pretty clear. It's not even up for debate. So the law is really obvious here. It says that corporations can't give contributions to these campaigns. So that's the first thing. But it says that contributions are not just money, that a material thing of value also counts as a contribution. And then the third thing is they've determined over the years that advertising, information about advertising, and advertising strategy is considered a thing of value. So our FEC complaint lays out what Rupert Murdoch says he did, lays out what the FEC sort of law is, and it says that, what the FEC needs to do is do their investigation and apply the maximum penalty that's allowable. And
get them.
What do we hope to accomplish? Well, the incredible thing about this is that unless someone actually nudges the FCC for these types of actions, they don't really do it proactively.
Isn't it wild that that's the case? I remember the FCC back in the day being like an intense organization, constantly going after adult comedy shows that I enjoyed because they said the F word one too many times. I have a feeling there was plenty of busybodies back then ensuring that the FCC did that work. Boy, lefties ought to take a note from this right here and understand that leftists being vocal is going to be a big part of what fixes America. Leftists insisting upon the rules being followed when those rules not being followed hurts decency. For way too long, the pattern for lefties, the cultural pattern for lefties has been just be quiet and cast your one vote on election day, and don't worry so much about the primaries. We got to knock that off. We got to be loud. We got to get used to writing in to places. It's easier than it's ever been. It's as simple as doing an email. We have to be a political force. We got the numbers. It's time that we use them.
So we were getting the ball rolling, and I think what we're trying to accomplish is another small sliver of accountability, but big picture, the way I sort of see what's come out of the Dominion filings and all these Dominion revelations is that it doesn't just begin and end with the defamation about Dominion. I see this as sort of the beginning of a cascading series of consequences for Fox, for the Murdochs, and this is just another layer of that cascade.
What enforcement ability does the FEC have if Fox is found to have violated FEC law as the result of this complaint here? Like, what's the best case scenario for us in terms of what can happen to Fox?
So, I mean, big picture, it depends. What's incredible about this is that there's no clarity as to what the penalty could be, because what ends up happening is they do an investigation. We don't know how much information was shared. We know that Rupert Murdoch talked about sharing this advertisement, and the other piece of it is what was described as confidential debate information. And beyond that, what ends up happening is the FEC, they sort of unpacks this. They get a full scale of what was actually involved, how much information was shared, and then they do a second piece, which is to value it. So they say, how much, if you were to pay for this, would you spend? Would you spend millions? Would you spend a couple $1,000s? And then they essentially use that as their baseline to then assess the penalty. And they would do some multiplier depending on the value. What I would say is if you don't need to be a political scientist or a media expert to know that a few weeks before an election, a presidential election, having the inside scoop on what your opponent is going to run in their advertisements and when they're going to run them and how they're going to run them is awfully valuable. And so, the penalties could be significant. But I also think more important than that, and this is the part that I think really is worth keeping in mind here with all this Dominion stuff, is that everything here is so explosive. All the information we're hearing about the host, all this stuff, even with this illegal contribution thing, that's one sliver. This is only about, we only have a keyhole view into what Fox has been doing behind the scenes. We're only looking at what they did in relation to Dominion in the election. So what I would say is the FEC could, in theory, uncover so many other illegal contributions. And I think that's always been the case with Fox. The corruption is always much more deep once you start to peel back the layers.
To watch the full episode with Angelo, click the...
Just want to say, your old pal Jake is now subscribed to Terry Canfield. I think that's a great suggestion. I just looked at some of the videos she's talking about. That was a suggestion by... Everybody hold up. Sorry, I've had that song in my head for a while. Lawrence St. Laurent. Yeah, I'll give it a look. Some of those looked fantastic. I will absolutely let you know what I think. In regards to what we just heard about, let me go back a little bit, just a tiny little bit, to what the very last thing he said.
Sliver. This is only about, we only have a keyhole view into what Fox has been doing behind the scenes. We're only looking at what they did in relation to Dominion in the election. So what I would say is the FEC could, in theory, uncover so many other illegal contributions. And I think that's always been the case with Fox. The corruption is always much more deep once you start to peel back the layers.
To watch the full episode...
Yeah. It's the same thing I was saying about January 6th. It's the same thing I've been saying about every other crime that Donald Trump seems to have committed that we are aware of. We only it's bizarre how much we know as the public about this. It's bizarre how much illegal stuff we're aware of as the public on this. Imagine how much we are going to learn when a prosecutor insists on the truth. Similarly, look at how corrupt Fox has acted. We only know this because of a civil lawsuit. Imagine if a serious investigation was done. Can you fathom the outcry there would be if MSNBC had taken Trump campaign ads and given them to the Biden campaign before they aired? First of all, the Biden campaign, I don't think, would be corrupt enough to accept such information. But if that had happened, we would be flooded with demands for the Justice Department to get involved. We would be flooded with protests. We wouldn't hear the end of it. That is the reaction we should have regarding Fox and the Biden campaign ads. I hope sincerely that group is successful. I encourage you all certainly to praise them. I encourage you all to write in to the FCC and say, go get them. The hell are you doing? But most importantly, what you can do. Ask Fox watchers what they think of the behind the scenes texts. We need to drive a wedge between Fox viewers and the network. We cannot allow there to be a disinformation channel that just exists, and the only way to get rid of them, like on American TV, like it's a normal thing just to have disinformation pumped out constantly. We can't allow that anymore. What I would recommend you do, just ask Fox watchers. Now that we know that Carlson, Hannity, and Ingraham, I can't believe that's the correct way to say her name, but it is, didn't believe the Dominion conspiracies, do you think you should take them seriously? The Dominion conspiracies, do you think you should take those seriously? Fox, do you think you should take them seriously? You can even recommend to them CNN. They've been making a poll for that old school Fox audience that let's just believe the GOP no matter what they say Fox audience, not necessarily MAGA. Just ask them that. Just get the conversation started, because right now we are still in a place where Fox cannot talk about the Dominion suit. They can't refute the things they had to say. And by the way, even if they were given that opportunity, it's going to be hard to refute the fact that those text messages exist and they said what they said. Drive that wedge. It's going to be useful. Laurent recommended Terry Canfield's YouTube channel. I am definitely going to be looking at that. And then says, by the way, that George Santos is doing, what George Santos is doing is similar to what Fox does. Plenty of people see him and go, he's a liar like all politicians. That's it exactly. Yes. And he is doing that because he is aware of, I'm not trying to sound too much like a 60s era lefty here, but look, they were right about a lot of things. He knows that's what fascists do. He's not interested in any sort of agenda other than his own advancement, his own accumulation of power. And so he's like, I know what this party's all about. They're fascists. We got to just gish gavel. We got to throw so much nonsense at them that they can't refute all of it. They can't keep up with all of it. They can't remember all of it. And the people who voted for me are going to vote for me again because they will write it all off as politicians lie. So if all politicians lie, then no reason not to vote for the liar who seems to support your causes generally. That is the playbook, and you've nailed it exactly. That is exactly what he is doing. It goes on and on until we say no more, folks. We are just going to keep getting more of that. Well, saying no more is going to look an awful lot like some of these liars who broke the law going to prison. Of all people that I find myself bizarrely agreeing with these days, Adam Schiff nails it. Here he is on MSNBC with the message that justice delayed too long is justice denied. And I agree.
All right, welcome back to Velshi. I want to get right to our next guest, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He's a senior member of the House Judiciary Committee. He's a former member of the January 6th committee. He was the lead impeachment manager during President Donald Trump's first impeachment in 2020. And he's been a leading voice against, been a leading voice on a lot of things. I want to introduce Representative Schiff. Good to see you, sir. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Good to see you.
We have a lot to get through. The first is that we are waiting to hear about what's happening with this Manhattan grand jury investigation. We know that Michael Cohen is going to speak to the grand jury tomorrow. He's met with the Manhattan DA many times. People are wondering whether something will happen, but it's not the shoe that everybody's waiting.
Before we jump too far into that, I just found out that Velshi also got his start on Al Jazeera. Was anybody else aware of that? I thought he was a local news guy that made his way up to MSNBC. I'm a little bit bummed, frankly, but I do think it's kind of adorable that he and Mehdi Hasan worked together before they were both on MSNBC. But I thought he was a local newsman. Oh well.
To see drop with respect to Donald Trump. They're more interested in the January 6th stuff, the Georgia election conversations, maybe even the documents. What's your sense of where we are in the accountability of Donald Trump?
Yeah, first of all, in light of your last story, I want to, send my thoughts out to my fellow Californians who are underwater right now and want to make sure they get all the help that they need to rebuild. In terms of where we are in holding Donald Trump and his enablers accountable, Ali, I think you're absolutely right. This hush money scheme is important, but the most important is his role in trying to stop the transfer of power and the violent insurrection in the multiple lines of effort to overturn our election. I take my hat off to the Manhattan DA finally for moving on what he's moving on. It does beg a question, though, Ali, of why the Justice Department never moved on this. They prosecuted Michael Cohen in a scheme that the indictment said involved an individual number one who coordinated and directed that hush money scheme. They said Michael Cohen had to go to jail for his role in that. So what's the argument that the guy who directed and coordinated the scheme gets a pass? So if Manhattan goes forward, it will beg the question why the Justice Department didn't. And the broader question is, why has the Justice Department taken so long with respect to January 6th?
Look, I'm going to choose to ignore my own analytics here and believe that Adam Schiff has been watching What You Can Do. That's it, my friend. That is exactly what we've been asking. If the state-level folks could pursue these charges, what the hell was stopping the federal folks from doing the same? Nothing is the answer. It's a rhetorical question. The answer is, to my knowledge, nothing. I have to leave the window open. It's possible there is a grand strategy that I simply can't see with my silly civilian eyes. But come on. The harm has been done in a lot of cases. And I just like statute of limitations passing on some of these crimes. And I just can't. I find it hard to believe that in the country where we let Ronald Reagan, Nixon, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush get away with just horrific crimes in office, that suddenly the Justice Department was going to change its tune and take Trump seriously. I find that very difficult. What changed from my perspective was the patience of the American people. And you should feel, by the way, proud of yourself for being part of the generation that said enough is enough with this criminal behavior in office. We will not put up with it anymore. But we now have a Justice Department which is scrambling to try to actually make good on what it's there for, because it never had to do that before. That said, the one point I want to just argue with a little bit about how they introduced that was holding some crimes is more important than the other. No. You, Justice Department, Merrick Garland, I'm assuming you watch this regularly as well, despite my constant insults. Merrick Garland, you get him on whatever you can get him on. We don't care if it's tax evasion and then the coup. We don't care if it's selling or taking illegally information from Fox and then tax dodging and then the coup. Whatever. All you should care about, did the guy do the thing? Was the thing illegal? That's it. Soon as you can, first charges. Then worry about the second charges. Then worry about the third, the fourth, the fifth. But hold the man accountable. Hold Donald Trump accountable for the crimes he did. It shouldn't be difficult. He did most of them that we're aware of publicly. Christ.
Why was Congress able to move with more speed and more thoroughness in terms of investigating the former president's misconduct? I hope we're going to see some changes there. It does look like the special counsel in the January 6th investigation is nearing the end of that investigation, at least judging by the high-level witnesses he's trying to bring in. But they were very slow to get to this point.
Yeah, and I guess there are differences in an impeachment procedure and in the January 6th committee and in the way evidence is gathered and cross-examination.
Yeah, but not that much.
But the January 6th committee did do a lot of work on this. The impeachment did do a lot of work on this. And I guess a number of people are saying, we understand we don't want this to feel political because Donald Trump makes everything political all the time. But the clock is ticking. Donald Trump is at the moment a presidential candidate. Donald Trump still has a lot of supporters. And last week he declared himself everyone's justice and retribution, whatever that means.
You're absolutely right, Ali. It's a different process in Congress, but generally that process is so much slower than the Justice Department. For example, when we tried to enforce our subpoenas to bring in witnesses in the January 6th investigation, we couldn't enforce them ourselves. We had to go to the Justice Department to enforce them for us, and they only proceeded with 2 of the 4 we referred. When you basically tell the Justice Department, as opposed to Congress, you're not showing up, you're going to jail. So they can enforce their subpoenas with much greater speed and effectiveness than we can. So the differences between the Congress and the Justice Department is they should have been able to move a lot faster than us. But
remember, he just said the Justice Department should have been able to move a lot faster than us. Adam Schiff is describing the January 6th committee, which was formed, did its investigation, and recommended charges already. Where's that Justice Department? Still the Justice Department is crawling along the path to do this, if they even have plans to charge Trump at all. We shouldn't be left wondering, the American people shouldn't be left wondering if our Justice Department is going to seek justice on our behalf. We literally don't know if that's their intention. It's a disgrace, and it tells Republicans what they can get away with. Right now, the GOP is looking at this and saying, fascism is a genuine option in the United States. All we have to do is be slightly more subtle than Donald Trump about it, and there wouldn't be this outcry. All we have to do is not say in a recorded phone call X or Y. All we have to do is make slight tweaks, and we can still subvert the will of the American people. I say Republicans because this is a party that knows it is shrinking every day. It already relies on gerrymandering to survive. See what happened in Michigan in 2018 when we ungerrymandered the state. And look at that. Turns out the state votes overwhelmingly Democratic. They already rely on gerrymandering to survive. They already rely on the Electoral College for the presidency. They already rely on unfairness by written into the law. Of course, the next thing they're going to go to is unfairness that's not written into the law, but simply that they can get away with. Of course, that's where they're going. And of course, that's what they're going to try to do, unless there is consequences for breaking the laws we do have.
Faster than us, but again, we'll see where that takes us now. I do think that we ought to be learning fairly soon what decisions they're making, and you're right. They need to avoid any political perception to the maximum degree possible. But if they give a kind of de facto immunity to the former president because they want to even avoid any appearance of impropriety, then they are being political. They're giving the president a pass. They're not following what the Attorney General promised at the outset of the investigation, which is that they would follow the evidence wherever it leads, because the evidence has led to Donald Trump.
What do you think is likely to happen? Where is this justice likely to come from the most? I know we're watching Jack Smith and watching what the Attorney General does, but there is a completely separate investigation going on in Georgia that we're getting dribs and drabs out of that look like at least indictments maybe recommended for some people. Is that going to be meaningful?
I think Georgia could be very meaningful, and the Georgia District Attorney has a lot of guts, has a lot of courage, and moved, I think, with very thorough investigation.
So, I was really hoping Ali Velshi would have jumped on that. Adam Schiff said the excuse they're using is to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. And then he goes on to say, but if they give Donald Trump a pass because he is a politician, that is also impropriety. Yes, the appearance of impropriety should also include being overly generous to politicians, to refusing to say that they are investigating a politician if they are. Why? Because they wouldn't have treated somebody who's not a politician the same way. That in and of itself is impropriety. We've already had impropriety, not just the appearance of, the actual fact of impropriety. We have already had politicians getting treated with kid gloves because of the job they do. That alone is enough to say, you're out, Garland. You were supposed to be non-political. That doesn't mean kind to politicians. It means politics should be irrelevant to what you do. Guy's got to go.
With a very thorough investigation. I chose to conduct the January 6th hearing around Georgia. Brought in Brad Raffensperger and others to testify, Shay Moss and others. Because to me, in that case, that line of effort to overturn the election where you have Donald Trump on the phone with the Secretary of State demanding 11,780 votes that don't exist, making fraud claims that his own Attorney General had told him were BS. You don't have to wonder, what did the president know and when did he know it? He's on the phone. You can hear his voice. That's very powerful and damning evidence. So we'll see whether what the grand jury four-person in the investigative grand jury was alluding to, whether that was correct or not. And I would hope that the new grand jury, a criminal grand jury, would be able to use summaries of the evidence presented to the investigative one and not have to repeat all that work.
Michael Popak calls it a press and play case, and I'm inclined to believe him.
So that we can get to justice, because as we know, ultimately, when justice is denied for too long, when it's delayed for too long, it ends up being denied.
What about what happened last weekend?
Yeah, wholeheartedly agreed. Justice delayed for too long does indeed become justice denied. I've been saying it since the beginning. This is the pattern used to give politicians a pass constantly. We always hear, well, we're going to investigate this, but listen, this is a serious thing. We're taking this seriously. So because we're taking it seriously, it's going to take a long time. Years of silence go by, and then eventually, some lefty whose hair has turned gray in the meantime says, whatever happened to Iran-Contra? Whatever happened to the Chenault affair? Whatever did happen to Bush lying about us going into war with Iraq? And we hear, well, look, the investigation petered out because this or that. Nonsense. There was never any interest in holding the powerful accountable. And as always, the American people were asked to be patient until we forgot about it. That's what happens every single time. That is what I believe was attempted here. Treat this new tragedy like we treated the old tragedies and hold no one accountable. No one that anyone will remember. It's a pretty straight path for what you can do. Tell the DOJ, first and foremost, no matter what state you live in, there's a link in the description. Tell the DOJ you expect charges filed against Trump this year. Next year's election year, if we're going to be honest about giving the Republicans a chance to field a president, field a candidate for president, we can't have them going into this with the impression that no charges are coming against Trump. We expect charges filed by the Department of Justice at the federal level this year. And there's more you can do. If you live in a fake elector state, which is Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, it's also Georgia and Michigan, but those have already filed charges. If you live in a fake elector state that has not started a state-level investigation, contact your attorney general. Links are in the description. I've provided a script if you need help with the words. The script says, AG Merrick Garland has had years to put together a case against those who tried to deny my vote in 2020, and yet he let the 2022 election pass without filing charges. He has been unwilling or unable to hold accountable those who were responsible. As your constituent, Attorney General, I want you to protect my vote by opening a state investigation into the false elector plot. I'll tell you, Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays has said she's considering it. That means it is a great time if you live in Arizona to write her and say, don't just consider it, do it. We haven't heard peep one from Raul Torres in New Mexico, Aaron Ford in Nevada, Michelle Henry in Pennsylvania, or Josh Call in Wisconsin. We haven't heard from them. Well, I think it's about time we do. Write them. Tell them you expect charges filed at the state level, because Merrick Garland isn't going to go after everybody he possibly can. He's going to go after as few people as he can, which means you are going to be left with members of the Republican Party in your state that participated in this plot and are not pursued by the law, unless you can get your state attorney general going after him now. Put the pressure on them. One of the main things Dana Nessel said was her reason for opening a state investigation into the fake electors plot was that she had pressure from her constituents. She had to answer to Michiganders who were saying, what the F is going on? Why is our vote not protected? Why does nobody seem to be interested in pursuing these electors? Because of that, she said, she opened a state-level investigation. In our poll that we did over the weekend to ask, who do you think is going to be first to indict Donald Trump? Jack Smith did not win. Alvin Bragg in New York won, a state-level district attorney. It should tell you that the power of the states is not to be underestimated. Oh, and by the way, state charges cannot get a pardon from a weak-willed Democratic president or a corrupt Republican president. We should bear that in mind as well. Let's have a look at these here. Oh, Lauren St. Laurent says, I thought Ali Velshi was Canadian for some reason. Yeah, he does give a very Canadian vibe. I don't know. I don't know where he's from initially. I know, obviously, very little about his background before MSNBC. That's just when I first saw the guy. But it wouldn't surprise me to find out that he was simultaneously working for Al Jazeera and living in Canada or something like that. He just has that vibe for sure. Well, I had a hoot today. I hope you did as well. If you enjoy the show, by the way, it would help me a great deal if you drop a like on the stream. Consider sharing it with your friends and subscribe if you're not already. Your old pal Jake loves doing this, telling you what you can do about these issues in the news. And the more people we have on board, the more we can do. Give it a thought. I will begin chopping this up. And I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's a 2 for Tuesday, which means we have 2 of these streams. Oh, baby. Hope you like them. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake.